Last month, something strange happened during my night shifts at the hospital. I've been a nurse for years, working mostly nights. I thought I knew every sound, every shadow in that old building. But what happened shook me. It started on my third night. I was making rounds, checking in on patients. As I walked past room 203, I heard whispers. Soft, eerie voices floated out from inside. I figured it was just my tired mind playing tricks. I kept walking, but I felt uneasy. It felt like I was being watched. By the next night, the whispers were clearer. They seemed to echo down the long, white corridors. I saw patients staring at corners with wide, fearful eyes. One elderly man in room 205 grabbed my arm. "They're here," he said, his voice shaking. "The Watchers." I didn't know what to think. I nodded, but inside, my heart raced. Was he confused, or was something really going on? As the shifts continued, I couldn't shake the feeling. The beeping of the machines began to sync with the whispers. I did catch shadows flicking in the corners of my eyes, but when I looked, nothing was there. I convinced myself it was just exhaustion. But deep down, I was scared. One night in the break room, I poured myself some coffee. It was too quiet. Suddenly, I heard someone softly whisper my name. I froze. I turned. Nobody was there. I told myself it was just my mind. But with each passing shift, it felt harder to dismiss. It happened again. I entered room 207 to check on a young woman. As soon as I stepped inside, the whispers grew louder. They filled my head. I stopped, my heart pounding. I didn't know if I should confront whatever this was or just leave. The fear danced in my veins. I asked the patient in room 205 about the voices. I hoped for some comfort. Instead, he just stared wide-eyed and said, "Why are they here?" I felt my stomach drop. Then everything went cold. The lights flickered, and I turned around. Nothing was there. I started questioning my sanity. Was I imagining these voices? Had the stress and lack of sleep caught up with me? I wanted to help my patients, but I felt like I was losing my grip. Every corner I turned, every room I entered, it was there a presence that lingered. The shadows felt more defined now. It was like they didn't want me to leave. One night, as I walked past room 203 again, the whispers fell silent. In that moment, a chill swept through me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Every night since, I've gone back to that hospital. I'm still trying to make sense of what happened. I've tried to ignore the whispers. But now, it feels like they're waiting. Like they want me to listen. I don't know what they want, but part of me wonders if I'll ever truly understand. The next night, I returned to the hospital with a mix of dread and determination. I had convinced myself it was time to confront whatever was happening. Ignoring it hadn't worked, and curiosity gnawed at me like a hungry animal. As I started my shift, the familiar sense of antiseptic and sterile linoleum filled the air. I made my rounds with grinding intensity, checking vitals and giving medications, but my mind kept drifting back to those whispers. I felt like I was in a dream. Everything was ordinary, yet nothing felt right. While checking on patients, I found myself staring at room 203. I had avoided it for days. Maybe it was time to face my fears. With each step, my heart drummed in my ears. I reached for the doorknob and paused, every instinct yelling at me to turn away. But I pushed through, opening the door slowly. The room was empty. Just the bed and the sound of the machine beeping softly. I stepped in, bracing for the whispers, but only silence welcomed me. I scanned the walls, searching for a clue, anything that would help me understand. That's when I noticed something unusual. On the bedside table lay a small, worn-out diary. It looked old, the leather cracked and faded. I picked it up, and the moment I did, I felt a shift in the atmosphere. A cold breeze whipped through the room. I shivered and glanced around, hoping I wouldn't see anything lurking in the shadows. There was no one. Just the feeling of being watched. I flipped the diary open, and faint handwritten entries scrawled across the pages. They were dated, each one a year apart, detailing the life of a patient who had stayed here long ago. His words were laced with despair, mentioning dark figures and whispers in the night. The last entry sent a chill down my spine. They want to take me. I can feel them creeping closer. My breath caught in my throat. The diary wasn't just a relic, it was a warning. I glanced back towards the hallway, feeling the weight of something heavy in the air. The whispers came flooding back, soft yet insistent. "Help us" echoed in my mind, murky and haunting. I slammed the diary closed and stepped back. The shadows shifted at the edge of my vision. I tried to shake the fear away, but it clung to me like fog. "You're just tired," I whispered to myself. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. A noise erupted from the hallway. I rushed out, driven by instinct. The nurse's station was alive with chaos. Someone had collapsed in the waiting area. Another nurse yelled for help. It pulled my focus from the inexplicable to the urgent. I ran towards the scene, adrenaline flooding my system. As I pushed through the gathering crowd, I caught a glimpse of something just inside the waiting area. A fleeting shadow. It stopped me in my tracks, heart pounding. I felt its pull, a sense that it was inviting me. "Come," it seemed to say softly. I fought against it, focusing instead on the patient needing help. I worked quickly, assessing vitals and checking for responsiveness, but my mind was still battling the shadows. They were calling me back. I hadn't fully processed what I found in room 203. But one thing was certain, whatever was happening in the hospital was getting worse. And now I was entangled in something I couldn't comprehend. Just when I thought the night couldn't get more intense, everything went still. The lights flickered one last time, plunging the entire hallway into darkness. My heart raced in the sudden darkness. The familiar sounds of the hospital, the beeping machines, the shuffle of feet, the hushed conversations vanished. An oppressive silence enveloped me, and I felt a surge of panic. The whispers returned, this time louder, swirling around me in a cacophony of voices. "Help us, find us," they murmured, pulling my thoughts deeper into the unknown. I reached for the flashlight clipped to my belt, fumbling as my hands shook. Flicking it on, the beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the faces of my colleagues, wide-eyed and fearful. A nurse next to me stammered, "What just happened?" Before I could respond, I noticed the far end of the hallway. A shadow flickered at the edge of my light. It moved fluidly, just beyond the reach of my gaze. I swallowed hard, gripping the flashlight tighter. "What was that?" I asked, more to myself than to anyone else. Chaos erupted again as emergency lights kicked on, bathing the corridor in a dim, red glow. The letters spelling "emergency" above the doors blinked ominously. I turned toward the source of the commotion, but my focus was drawn back to the shadow. It moved again, slipping between the walls. "Stay close," I yelled, trying to rally the nurses around me. "We need to check on the patients in the waiting area." But the unease settled between us like a thick fog. No one wanted to venture into the shadowed corners of the hospital. "Do you feel that?" one of the nurses asked, her voice trembling. I did. It was like a cold hand resting on my shoulder, holding me in place. I could almost hear the faint scratching of nails against the tile floor, pulling at the fringes of my mind. "We have to keep moving," I insisted. I stepped toward the waiting area, breathing heavily. As we made our way, I felt a sudden rush of air that swept around us. The whispers became frenzied, entwining with my thoughts. "Find him, save him," they pleaded, deeper now, resonating in the back of my mind. My grip on the flashlight faltered as I stepped into the waiting area. It was dark, save for the emergency lights that flickered over empty chairs. But as my eyes adjusted, I spotted something on the floor, a folded piece of paper. Cautiously, I approached it, the whispers intensifying with each step. I knelt to pick it up, my heartbeat matching the frantic rhythm of their calls. The paper was stained and ripped at the edges. As I unfolded it, my stomach dropped. It was a page torn from another diary, similar to the one I had found. Scrawled in frantic handwriting were the words, "He is here. They are coming for him. Don't let them take me." A sharp intake of breath escaped my lips. Who was he? What did it mean? Suddenly, there was a loud bang from the far end of the waiting room. I swung around, flashlight shaking. The tension snapped, and for the first time, I felt fear gripping my throat hard. The shadows danced along the walls, taunting me. A form stepped into the light, and I froze. It was a figure, but I couldn't see its face. It loomed just outside my vision, a dark silhouette that flickered in and out of existence. I realized then that whatever had been haunting the hospital had found me. And I was not prepared for what it wanted. I stood there, my heart pounding in my chest, frozen by fear. The figure shifted slightly, its outline blurring as if it were made of smoke. My breath hitched in my throat. I should have turned and run, but I felt rooted in place, drawn to it. "Who are you?" I managed to whisper, my voice barely audible above the whispers that swirled around me. The response was just silence, then a flicker at the edges of my perception. It felt as if the very air around me thickened, making it hard to breathe. Just then, a scream burst through the waiting area, shattering the tension. It was a woman's voice, shrill and frantic. I snapped my head toward the sound, realizing it was coming from the children's ward down the hallway. The urgency compelled me, I had to see what was happening. "Stay here," I ordered my colleagues, pointing to the nurses. If we were going to get through the night, we needed to stay together. The dark figure was still watching me, and that knowledge gnawed at my insides. I stepped back, the flashlight guiding me through the sticky darkness. The whispers quickened, urging me to hurry. "He'll be lost, save him." As I neared the children's ward, another crash echoed through the corridor, sounding like a chair toppling over. My feet moved faster, and adrenaline surged. I swung open the door, plunging inside. The room was lit by a single flickering bulb, casting erratic shadows across the wall. The sight before me made my heart plummet. A small boy was crouched beneath a table, wide-eyed and trembling. His eyes darted around the room as if he could sense something I couldn't see. My instinct kicked in. "Hey, buddy, it's okay," I said gently, kneeling down to his level. "You're safe now. Just come to me." But he shook his head, pressing himself further against the table. "No. They're here," he cried out, his voice cracking. A chill rushed down my spine. Catching a glimpse of movement at the edge of my flashlight's beam, I turned again, and there it was, the shadowy figure, now hovering just outside the threshold. My mind raced. Was it responsible for his fear? "Who?" I asked, voice low but steady. "Who's here?" In that moment, the whispers crescendoed, drowning out everything else. "He is not safe, save him," they pleaded. I felt the weight of their urgency pressing down on me. I turned back to the boy. "We need to go. Can you walk?" I extended my hand, and for a brief moment, he hesitated. Then he took my hand, his grip surprisingly strong. As we moved toward the door, a shrieking sound filled the air, reverberating through the walls. I glanced back, the flashlight beam quivering wildly. The figure shifted closer, looming larger, its presence now oppressive. No longer a mere shadow, it seemed as though it was reaching for us. We bolted from the room, the child dragging me along as if he somehow knew the way. My thoughts raced. I needed to get us out, away from whatever this was. But as we ran, the whispers turned grave. "You cannot escape." That's when I saw it. A door ajar at the end of the hallway, light spilling through the crack. I didn't think, just ran toward it, praying it would lead us to safety. But the laughter that followed, chilling and mocking, told me we might not be alone in seeking an escape. And with each step, my hope dwindled. I pushed the door open with urgency, dragging the boy behind me. The light spilled into the corridor like a beacon. The moment we crossed the threshold, I felt a rush of relief. But just as fast, that relief turned to dread. The door slammed shut behind us with a violent force, the echo reverberating in my ears. I whipped around, heart racing. The boy clung to my leg, his wide eyes reflecting fear. "They're coming," he whispered, the tremor in his voice slicing through my resolve. I could sense something. It wasn't just fear. It was something deeper, a primal instinct warning us of danger. "Listen to me," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "We need to move." I grabbed his hand and pulled him along. We raced down the hallway, the blaring alarms and frantic footsteps of nurses in the background becoming a distant memory. The whispers returned, louder now, flooding my mind. "Turn back, save him," they sounded frantic and desperate, and I couldn't shake the urge to heed their warning. But what did I need to save him from? We rounded the corner, and I skidded to a halt. Another door loomed ahead, but this one was heavy, ominous. It was marked Isolation Room. My hand froze above the handle. It felt wrong to open it, like crossing a forbidden threshold. Yet the boy tugged at me, desperate to escape. "They can't follow us if we go in there," he cried, his breath coming in quick bursts. I hesitated, battling between my instincts and the boy's panic. Then, without thinking, I turned the handle. The door creaked open, and the scent of antiseptic hit me like a wave. I stepped inside, pulling the boy along. The room was dark, a single light flickering overhead. Shelves lined the walls, stacked with bottles and strange instruments that felt like remnants of whatever had taken place here. "I can't stay here," he whimpered, his tiny body trembling. I scanned the room, searching for something to barricade the door. My chest tightened with anxiety. Whatever haunted this place was still lurking outside. "Just give me a second," I urged, the whispers growing frantic in my mind, crawling under my skin. I pushed a metal cart against the door, feeling the cold steel bite into my palms. The boy pressed himself against the far wall, his eyes darting everywhere, scanning for some unseen threat. Suddenly, the lights flickered violently, plunging us into shadows. The whispers turned into a chorus of panicked cries, and I felt the temperature drop. An overwhelming sense of dread washed over me. "Stop it. Just stop," I shouted, feeling the weight of the boy's fear mingle with my own. As if answering my cry, the light steadied again, revealing a figure standing in the corner, merging with the shadows. It was the same hazy form I had seen before, but now it seemed to pulse with malice. The boy gasped, pointing a trembling finger. "It's him." He back. Before I could respond, the temperature plummeted further. I felt an icy breath on my neck, the whispers spiraling out of control. "You shouldn't have come here." My stomach twisted. In that moment, I realized whatever was haunting this hospital wouldn't let us go easily. We weren't just running from the shadows, we were running from something far worse. Then everything went dark, and I felt my heartbeat quicken painfully. I lost sight of the boy beside me, and panic gripped me tightly. I reached out, desperate to find him, but all I felt was emptiness. "Where are you?" I gasped, the darkness swallowing my voice. In that heartbeat of silence, I knew we were not alone anymore. I felt a surge of adrenaline as I stood in the thick darkness. My heart pounded in my ears, drowning out every sound except the rapid breaths I took. The boy had vanished, and for a moment, I was utterly alone. I swallowed hard, fighting back panic. "Can you hear me?" I called out, voice trembling. There was no answer, just a deep, suffocating silence. I reached out, flailing my arms, trying to find the boy, but all I encountered was the cold, empty air of the room. Then I heard a soft whimper, barely audible. Over here it came from my right, and I stumbled towards the sound. "I'm scared." His voice broke, the fear palpable. "Just hold on," I said, desperate to reach him. I shuffled through the darkness, feeling the sharp edges of equipment brush against my skin. My foot caught on something, and I fell to the floor, landing with a heavy thud. Pain shot through my ankle, but I couldn't stop. I had to find him. "Please," I yelled, pushing myself up. My pulse raced, feeling the air grow colder. The whispers returned, a haunting melody that spiraled around me. Save him, they echoed louder, stinging my ears. In that moment of chaos, the flickering light overhead buzzed back to life, flickering erratically. I spotted him huddled in the far corner, tears streaming down his cheeks. I rushed over, relieved to find him. "Are you okay?" I asked, reaching out to him. "I thought you left me," he cried, practically throwing himself into my arms. I hugged him tightly, feeling the warmth of his small body against the chill of terror surrounding us. "I'm right here," I reassured him, but my words felt hollow. The air was thick with dread. Something was wrong, and I could feel it tightening around us like a vice. "Get me out of here," he begged, pulling away slightly to look into my eyes. I nodded, still holding his little hand tightly. I glanced back towards the door, aware that time was slipping through our fingers. "We have to go. Now." But as I turned to face the barricaded door, a low growl reverberated through the room, halting me in my tracks. My breath hitched. The whispers escalated into a cacophony of screams, each one piercing my mind. "Help us! Help us!" I steeled myself, adrenaline coursing through my veins. "Stay close," I instructed the boy, my voice sharper now. I grabbed the metal cart I had pushed in front of the door and shoved it aside. With trembling hands, I turned the handle and flung the door open. A blinding light flooded the room, illuminating the corridor beyond. But something lurked just outside, half hidden in the shadows, waiting for my next move. That's when I saw it, a figure standing right there, watching us. Its eyes glinted with malevolence, and it took a step forward. "Run!" I screamed, yanking the boy with me into the uncertain darkness of the hallway. The hallway stretched out before us, long and narrow, filled with a suffocating tension. I pulled the boy along, my heart racing as we dashed away from that figure. It felt like we were in a nightmare that refused to end, each step heavy with dread. "Where do we go?" he panted, glancing nervously over his shoulder. I glanced back too, but I didn't see anything. Not yet. The darkness seemed thicker here, like it was alive, wrapping around us like a shroud. "Just keep moving," I shouted, forcing my legs to move faster. We passed door after door, all locked and shut tight. Each one felt like a barrier, sealing us off from whatever horror thrived behind those walls. Then I spotted something, a faint light spilling from underneath one of the doors. I pulled the boy closer and aimed for it, hope creeping into my chest. Maybe we could hide there, or maybe it led to safety. We reached the door, and I pressed my ear against it. I heard low, muffled voices mixed with the sounds of whimpering. My blood ran cold. "What is happening in there?" I whispered, my grip tightening around the boy's hand. "I'm scared." He whimpered again, and I turned to him, trying to muster a reassuring smile. "I know, but we can't stop now. We need to find a way out," I reminded him, tapping on the door lightly. "Hello? Is anyone in there?" No answer came, just the unsettling sounds of the voices. Suddenly, the door rattled violently, as if something on the other side was slamming into it. I jumped back, adrenaline shooting through me. "Run!" I shouted again, frantically pulling the boy into a sprint down the hallway. As we turned the corner, I spotted another door ahead that looked slightly ajar. When we reached it, I kicked it open and stumbled inside. It was a small storage room, cluttered with old medical supplies, but it was a welcome refuge. I could hear my heart pounding against my ribs as I pushed the door closed, then leaned against it, trying to catch my breath. "We're safe for a moment," I whispered, looking at the boy, who was visibly shaking. "Just for a moment." But as I scanned the room, a glint of silver caught my eye. I moved deeper inside and found a battered metal cabinet. Its doors were slightly ajar, revealing an array of tools that felt wrong in this eerie place. "What is it?" the boy asked, sounding more curious than afraid. "I don't know, but it could help us." I reached for a rusting tool that looked like a wrench. Just as I grabbed it, a loud bang resonated from the hallway we had just left, followed by a chilling hiss that echoed like a whisper through the room. My stomach dropped. "Did you hear that?" I asked, wide-eyed. The boy nodded, pressing closer to me, his small body trembling. The whispers returned, now a soft chant, growing louder and more persistent. I couldn't make out the words, but they felt like they were pulling at my sanity. I had to know what was happening. Suddenly, the door rattled again, harder this time, and something began to push against it. I exchanged frantic glances with the boy, our breaths shallow. Then everything went dark. The lights flickered, and a shudder ran through the room. Desperation bubbled within me. What was out there? What did it want? Before I could say anything else, the door creaked, and I realized with horror that it was no longer locked. An icy rush of air filled the room, and the darkness surged in like it was alive. "Stay behind me," I commanded, clutching the wrench as a makeshift weapon. The boy squeezed my arm, and as the door finally swung open, I knew we were about to face whatever waited for us, closing in with chilling inevitability. The door swung open, creaking on its hinges, and I tightened my grip on the wrench. The darkness spilled into the room like a thick fog, enveloping us in an unsettling chill. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I stood frozen for a moment, heart racing. The boy's breath was shaky beside me. "What if it's dangerous?" he asked, his voice trembling. I didn't have an answer. I had no clue what was waiting for us, but I knew we couldn't stay here. "We can't wait to find out," I whispered, nudging him forward. "We have to keep moving and find another way out." I peered into the hallway beyond, squinting to see through the haze. We slipped out of the storage room, and the oppressive silence that surrounded us felt thicker than before. I checked behind us, my heart pounding at the thought of that figure chasing us. But all I saw was empty space, an unsettling reminder of how isolated we were in this vast, shadowy building. "Which way?" the boy asked, his small voice barely more than a whisper. "Let us try left," I decided, even though I didn't really know. A flicker of light danced ahead, and I took it as a sign. We made our way cautiously, the sound of our footsteps echoing in the emptiness. As we approached the light, I saw it wasn't just a flicker. It could be a real escape, or it could lead us deeper into whatever nightmare was unfolding here. I hesitated but pressed on. With each step, my senses heightened, alert to any sign of danger. Finally, we turned a corner, and there it was, a door aglow with a warm light. "What's behind that one?" the boy asked, peering up at me with wide eyes. "I don't know, but it looks promising," I replied, though my gut twisted. Nothing felt safe in this place anymore. I pushed the door open gently, revealing a bright room filled with medical equipment, lights overhead illuminating every corner. But my breath caught in my throat as I saw the walls. They were adorned with photos and reports, each one detailing strange cases, people twisted in agony, their faces contorted in fear. It struck a chord deep inside me. These weren't just random patients, they were victims of something far worse. "Look at this," I whispered, crawling to a bulletin board cluttered with yellowed papers. The headlines screamed at me: unexplained disappearances, voices from the other side, and patients lost in shadows. "They went missing?" the boy asked, his eyes wide with fear. What happened to them? I felt a chill run through me as I scanned the articles, piecing together fragments of a horrifying story. It's more than just a hospital. They might have been experimenting on people, I muttered. Just then, the lights flickered, a surge of anxiety washing over me. I felt it before I saw it, an uncomfortable presence creeping up behind me. I turned slowly, dread pooling in my stomach. And then I froze. A shadow loomed in the doorway, darker than the surrounding darkness, its outline indistinct. It lowered, shifting into something more menacing, its form undulating eerily. "Run!" I yelled, grabbing the boy's arm. We darted back into the hallway, but the figure slipped in behind us, commanding the space with a sinister confidence. As we sprinted, I could hear the soft chant again, echoing in my mind, mixing with my own frantic heartbeat. I didn't understand what it wanted, but I knew it wouldn't let us leave without a fight. "Where do we go?" the boy cried out, panic rising. "Anywhere but here." All I knew was we had to escape the darkness that was now pursuing us. The urgency blossomed within me as an idea struck. If the room was filled with answers, there had to be a way out of this nightmare. I just had to find it before that darkness closed in. We tore down the hallway, my mind racing as we dodged shadows and flickering lights. The heavy silence was punctuated only by the sound of our footsteps, hammering against the concrete floor. I could feel the darkness closing in like a noose around our necks. "Over here!" I shouted as I spotted another door on the left. It looked older, battered, and half open. I shoved the boy through first, following closely behind. We stumbled into a cramped supply room, shelves filled with scattered medical supplies and boxes piled high. A musty smell hung in the air, making it hard to breathe. "Is it gone?" the boy whispered, his eyes wide with terror. I pressed my ear to the door, listening intently. There was silence, but I could still feel that lingering weight, as if something was watching us from the other side. "I don't know. Maybe we can hide for a moment," I said, moving farther into the room. "Do you think it's safe?" he asked, glancing around nervously. I didn't want to lie to him. "For now, yes," I replied, though I wasn't sure if I believed it. We crouched behind a stack of boxes, trying to stay quiet. I could feel my heart racing, and I heard the boy's quick breaths beside me. But then, something caught my eye. A door at the back of the room, slightly ajar, with a sliver of light peeking through. I gestured for the boy to follow me as I tiptoed toward it. The urge to explore ignited my curiosity, even in the face of danger. "Should we open it?" he asked, voice quivering again. I nodded slowly. We had little choice. I turned the handle, and it creaked open to reveal a small staircase leading down. A chill radiated from the space below, and I had a strong urge to pull away. Still, we had to take the risk. So much fear had already consumed us, we couldn't back down now. "Stay close," I instructed, and we descended the stairs, the dim light growing faint as we moved deeper underground. Each step was a reminder of where we were. At the bottom, we found ourselves in a dimly lit corridor, lined with what appeared to be old medical rooms. The air was thick with something I couldn't identify, dust or mist, maybe, but it clung to my skin. "What if we can find something useful?" I wondered aloud. "Like answers about what is happening here. Or we might find it," the boy added, his voice trembling again. A sudden thought struck me. What if we could use those supplies? I gestured back to the supply room. If we can find a way to defend ourselves, we might have a chance. "Like weapons?" he asked, trying to manage a note of bravery in his voice. "Exactly." I turned back to the corridor, scanning for anything that could help us. Then I spotted a cabinet at the far end. It looked like it might hold something useful. "Let's check that out." We moved cautiously, but the shadows seemed to dance around us, taunting and teasing. Just as we reached the cabinet, I heard a low growl behind us, an unmistakable sound that sent icy fear shooting through my veins. Run! I screamed again, and we bolted toward the nearest door, the chant rising louder, filling my ears. But this time, as I glanced back, I saw two glinting eyes in the dark, reflecting the pale light of the corridor. We weren't just being chased anymore, something darker had joined the hunt. Panic set in as I realized there was nowhere to hide, and I felt a jolt of fear ripple through me. Time was running out. Would we escape this nightmare, or become the next victims in this twisted place? I dashed into the room, pulling the boy behind me as I slammed the door shut. My heart thundered against my rib cage, and I pressed my back against the door, waiting for the inevitable crashing force. I felt the boy trembling beside me, his wide eyes staring up at me in terror. "Don't let it in," he whimpered, clutching my hand tightly. "Shoo," I whispered, trying to keep my own voice steady. I peered out the small window of the door, just in case. Nothing. But the stillness was deceptive. The whispers were back, louder now, swirling through the air like a tempest. "Find him before it's too late," they pleaded. My stomach churned with unease. Who? I thought, straining for clarity amidst the chaos. I turned to scan the room, quickly identifying shelves filled with outdated medical equipment and dusty file cabinets lining the walls. The ominous glow from the ceiling lights cast restless shadows across the floor. We were out of options. If we didn't find something soon, we might not survive. "Let us check those cabinets," I whispered, my voice low and urgent. The boy nodded, and together we moved toward the far wall, staying low. As we rummaged through the folders, my fingers brushed against something cool and metallic, an old syringe, its contents long expired and probably useless, but it gave me a flicker of hope. I pocketed the syringe and kept searching. I called out to the boy, "See if you can find anything useful. Anything sharp." He nodded and began tossing aside papers, documents detailing past patients, some of them dated decades ago. Suddenly, something fell from the cabinet, a faded photograph. The boy picked it up and gasped, his little fingers trembling as he handed it to me. "Who is it?" he asked. I inspected the photo. It showed a group of children, grinning widely, but behind them in the background was a shadowy figure, almost imperceptible. In that second, my gut twisted. "I don't know. But something isn't right," I said, feeling a shiver run down my spine. Then I heard a thump against the door, followed by a low growling that reverberated in my chest. "It's coming," I hissed, heart racing as the shadows thickened around us. Desperation hit me. I needed to act, and fast. "Let us get out of here," I cried, pulling the boy close and heading towards another door at the back of the room. It seemed small, but I had to take the chance. Each second felt like an hour. But the door wouldn't budge. Panic surged through me as I pushed and pulled, but it was sealed tight. I could hear the creature's growl growing louder, creeping closer. I squeezed my eyes shut for a second, summoning every ounce of courage. "Listen to me," I yelled. "We're going to kick this door down on the count of 3. Can you do that?" The boy nodded, his fear mingled with determination. 1, 2, 3. We slammed our bodies against the door, and it jolted open, revealing a narrow stairwell leading down into darkness. I didn't think about it, I just pulled the boy and we rushed down, the cold air stinging our faces. The growls gave way to anguished whispers, almost pleading with us to stop. But I couldn't. I wouldn't. The hospital felt alive around us, the very walls laced with despair. The boy stumbled slightly as we descended the stairs, losing his grip on my hand. "Hold on," I urged, snatching his hand again. I felt the walls closing in, suffocating me. A distant light glimmered at the bottom, and we sprinted towards it. As we reached the final step, the whispers turned into deafening screams, filling my ears with the ache of 1,000 lost souls. We burst into the light, and my heart sank as I caught sight of what lay before us, a flooded hallway, water pooling across the floor. The darkness had chased us here, but it didn't stop. It was a part of the very essence of the hospital. "Where do we go?" the boy cried, panic flaring in his eyes. "Just follow me," I shouted, clenching my jaw. I had no plan, but we needed to get through. I dashed to the side, searching for a way around the water. Then, in the distance, I caught sight of a doorway, a faint glimmer of hope through the chaos. It beckoned like a lighthouse in a storm. "This way." We sprinted through the water, the sound of crashing waves echoing, drowning out the growls behind us. I could feel the shadows at our backs, desperate to drag us into their murky depths. As we neared the doorway, I glanced back. The shadowy figure was there, hovering at the edge of the light. "Run!" I shouted, pulling the boy along as I flung myself through the door. We stumbled into a small room. My breath came in ragged gasps, the boy panting beside me. I pressed the door shut, my heart racing. But it wasn't secure. I could hear the creature scraping against the outside, trying to break in. "Where are we?" the boy asked, his voice trembling. "I don't know," I admitted. But as I looked around, an unsettling realization washed over me. The room was filled with photographs and notes, scribbled in despair. The walls were dense with memories of those who had come before us. Then I spotted the child from the photograph, the boy who had been smiling, the one we'd seen in the photos scattered throughout this nightmare. But this photo was different, it looked fresh, and I felt a jolt of recognition. "What do they want?" the child whispered. "I don't know," I replied, swallowing hard. I unfolded the papers, searching for answers, but I couldn't find any that made sense. And then we heard it again, a chorus of voices flooding the room. "Help us, find him," they begged, the shadows urging us to obey. "Who?" I yelled, desperate for some understanding. "I think they mean you," the boy chimed in, pulling me back to the photos. But just then, the door buckled against the force of something trying to penetrate our sanctuary. The shadows whispered a promise of salvation or destruction. "Stay close," I murmured to the boy, trying to calm the rising tide of fear within me. We moved to the corner, crouched low, my mind racing for a solution. I knew we weren't safe yet, but whatever awaited us was still shrouded in mystery. Would we uncover the truth behind the whispers, or would we become just another pair of shadows within these cursed walls? I could only hope we would find a way to escape as the darkness pressed in. And then, as if sensing my resolve, the entity outside paused. I caught a glimmer of light beyond the door. Was it a way out? Or a deeper plunge into the unknown? I gripped the boy's hand tightly, unsure of what would come next, only that we had to keep moving forward. I could feel the tension hanging in the air, thick with anticipation. Whatever choice lay ahead would determine our fate, but the question remained, what price would we pay for freedom?